Greetings and salutations, everybody. My name is DarkX1 here, bringing you another episode of RWS Customs, Volume 2. Today we are capping off our mega review with the third and final installment. This time we're going to be starting off with engine number 45, Luke. Luke here is based off of our Great Western Railway 1500 class. My reasoning behind this decision was because it was the youngest tank engine produced largely before basically the modernization plan. Not counting the Dub Ds, which were war surplus, or the other LNR engines built afterwards as sort of surplus engines. But outside of that, I felt like it fit him the most. Plus, he did have a bit of a pannier tank, as his actual basis did largely have one, I believe. So it was kind of the perfect fit. And as you can see here, I've given him a livery that closely resembles his own, whilst also basically deviating by having black boiler, which is largely seen on industrial working engines. Considering he works in a quarry, makes sense. Now then, this time we have Freddy here, or Freddy the Fearless. Freddy here is based off of a 1366 class pannier tank engine. Now these were some of the Great Western Railway's dock workers, so you don't want to get on their bad sides. My reasoning for choosing it is because, again, dock workers don't want to frick with them. So it just made sense for an engine with Fearless in his name to have a basis that would be put in like conditions that would make anybody else break under pressure. So hey. Next up, we've got Andreas here. Andreas is based off of a 31,000 class 262 tank. These are fairly well documented classes. Not really, they weren't. But from the few pictures I was able to find, I was able to create his model based off one. And based off of the few personalities we have for him, it makes sense that it'd be a prairie tank, as they could be found on passenger trains on the Great Western Railway system, mainly suburban branch workings. But we won't let that stop him. Here's a quick one-over. I tried to model as much detailing as I could, and considering it's a black and yellow combo, I think I did a good job, even without the red rust patch that has become infamous with yellow engines here. Next up, we've got Duke, who is a 3700 City class engine. And as you can see, he looks a bit neater. The reason for this neatness is because he underwent a rebuild. Now, much like the other engines you've seen, the rebuilding involves basically giving it proper lining and surrounding it with black borders, as well as a minor refurbishment on the boiler. And honestly, it definitely shines, as I believe he was one of the last rebuilds I made before basically putting the production on pause for a while. And all in all, I can't wait to get back to it and do the same to Bertram here, who is also a 3700. And as you can see, design-wise, it's pretty clear which one is basically going to be the evolved version. And as you can see, he still bears the very patchwork-esque brown, because at the time, the brown I was using was less than adequate. Moving slightly on. Here we have Flora the Y6, who you've already seen before a while ago. Nothing much has changed, so there isn't much else I could say except another good tram engine. And here we bring out the Master of the Railway, Hero. Hero here is based off of a USATC S200. Now, you may be wondering, why the heck is that in... what would that be doing with Britain? My simple reasoning is that Hero is a 282. The only Mikado really present in Thomas and Friends. And because of that, we don't get a lot to work with. The only real engine that would work would either be the P1 Mineral engine, which we already have one, Mike, or the P2 Mikado, which again, we already have one and possibly another. So, I took a look at the USATC S200s, noticed their weight would basically be able to work on British rails if need be, because they were designed for service in Europe. And I said, I'm going to have to bend the rules a bit. And I bent them a bit. So here he is. He's based off of the Turkish examples with the wooden sides adding more for coal capacity. And I'm very pleased with how it went. He is also the first model to feature weathering on his face. Give this man a shower. Next up, we have Ashima, based on the Southern Railway Z-Class. These were heavy shunting engines, and looking at how she was displayed in the show, no leading or trailing wheels. It was basically a dead set, so I did it. Originally, as you will remember, she would have been a 7200, but that has been given away to somebody else, who I will not mention yet. So, no spoilers. Moving on. Here we have Axel, Southern Railway Schools Class. Now, as you may be noticing, the tender looks very off. And that is because this is the tender that was nicked off of a Lord Nelson for 2 school class engines for use on a section of, I believe, leading out of London. It was basically to add further capacity, and I figured, hey, if this man wants to go fast, let's give him a way to do non-stop runs. So, 4-axle tender. Well, not 4-axle, but bogies. Gotta love them. And here you get a once-over. And also, something you'll notice is that he actually has side rods on both sides, as in the review of him, he was missing a side set. So, hey, I guess you've got one of your many bloopers for my channel. Feel free to, I guess, call it out in the comments if you want. I leave them open for a reason. Don't be afraid to use them. Now here we have the other Stanley. The Stanley here is based off a later 4400 class engine, which I believe some of the 3100s were rebuilt into. Same wheel arrangement of 262T. Makes sense if that rumor is true. Now Stanley here looks a lot less industrial than you'd think I'd make him, considering his war origins. But here he is, as the small prairie chap that I have chosen for him. I would have chosen a 460 tank if I could have found one. But hey, it works very well. So, scooch over. And next up, Ivo Hugh. Despite the young age of Ivo actually being, well, pretty much a teenager, I've actually given him a Great Western Railway 1101 class look. This is largely because of its smaller stature, essentially making up for the age difference now. Besides, I like to think that, again, small little grubby dude working around in the industrial states would basically be a sheltered lifestyle, making him a lot younger mentally than any other engine out on the road. Now then, we've got a set of twins, and these are based off of the mine engines on the Midsutter layout. Now, one of the engines here, Atlas, is represented right here as number 56. Being a Great Western Railway 1076 class pannier tank engine, but with the cab lobbed off and pannier tanks. Not many of those you'll ever see in photos, but here it is. And then the second engine here, number 57, is Alfred, rocking the Great Western Railway 2021 class. No, the class was not built in 2021, but its number series was in that range. Whether this was intentional foreshadowing or not is up to you to decide. But here they are, sort of having a twinsy appeal. And there they go. Now, onto a model that you can obviously tell out of the batch of monoblocks was kind of rushed. Albert. Albert here represents the Lancashire and Yorkshire again with the Class 23 060 saddle tanks. He was honestly, I feel like I could have done him more justice, and he probably will get a rebuild just for the sake that I kind of feel like it's not right to leave him like this. With the saddle tank far too round and delivery not properly ending. Looks like a blueberry. Unfortunate. Scooching along. And now we take a look at Jim, a Taff Vale A class, who I've already reviewed. So there ain't much else I could say on him. If you want to find out more, check out that video. But he will obviously be working on the branches near, well, Scarloy. Scarloy. Next up, we have Jerry at 3900, who I also believe I reviewed, but in case I didn't, I chose this class because, again, he's an obscure character, and I wanted to model as many British engines as I could, so I latched onto this idea of making him a 3900, as I'd found out about the class and took an interest. And I'm glad to see it sort of paid off here. as while being the dark green and dull livery engine he is, it makes good for background work. Now next up, we've got a trifecta we're going to try in one shot. First up is Tim, a Southeastern Railway R1, the later version, I believe, modified. My reasoning for choosing it: 060 tank engine meets 060 tram engine, I believe. I believe he had side skirts as an actual model, so you're not going to be able to really tell. Unless you go in there, take his model, and flip it over. Thieves. Now then, here is Red, or Jennings, background engine, Southeastern Railway B-Class. Moving on. And lastly of this trifecta, we have John, a LSWR G6 class. Moving right along. Now then, we get onto a pair of twins of sorts with B-17s, number 64 and 65. 64 here, named Silver, and 65, Tramp, are based off of a magazine character Boko told a story to us about. So, hey, they have no official looks, but I'd imagine they'd look like this. B-17-5s were basically discount A4s, but they also performed relatively, basically no different than any other member of the B-17s. So, hey, I guess you gotta hammer home the arrogance somehow. And then Tramp here is the second model featuring weathering. Again, get these boyos a shower. Now here we have Frida, who originally, I believe, was also a clan in the last line. So, consistency. And as you can see, livery became brighter, and now yellow is the primary color. The clans or the 6MTs were some of the more underrated British Railways performers, and I am excited for when the actual clan comes back in the form of, I believe, the newest new build project, or not new build, but rebuilding of sorts. As it's borrowing a lot of parts, but also making a lot more for a new engine. So hey, you'll be seeing that soon. Next up is Gina, represented by an Andrew Barclay W38, specifically the preserved engine. Reasonings for this is because it's industrial, and her original design was definitely very bare bones. So, hey, industrialism wins out again. Speaking of industrialisms, we have a Warborn Shane, representing the WD-280, specifically the armored variant, which would not actually see civilian use if it weren't for the fact that I cut out side windows, as the original armored version had nothing, and that would have led to a lot of accidents, I imagine. I only really did this because it matched his shape, and if I hadn't chosen this, it would have been the gas turbine. So, hey. Well, if it works, it works. Coming up to the final two, here we have Carlos, represented by a Great Western Railway 4700 Night Owl. These were freight engines, and I believe, lore-wise, he did compete in the competition of strength. So, hey, strong wins out. And to cap off this part, we'll be looking at Young Bao. Originally, in the last line, he would have been an A2-3 Thompson-built engine. But now he is instead a Peppercorn A2 class, which is basically Thompson A2 stroke 3, but modified to make the front end a bit cleaner. But all in all, they were, as all engines in the later era of steam, had their faults, but we're still good. And with that being said, the only other engine really left is Spencer, who cuts 3 slots ahead to 74, and you've already heard his story, so let's not give this arrogant show-off any more time to shine. This has been DarkX1 here, and I'll be seeing you next time. Goodbye.